in Cairo, Egypt. But I grew up as a child in the 50s in the Gaza Strip. And the reason I was in Gaza was because Gaza at that time was part of Egypt. And Gamal Abdel Nasser was the president of Egypt, and he had a revolution in 52, kicked the king of Egypt and ruled Egypt, promising freedom and democracy. Same thing that we had just a year ago. His mission was to destroy Israel. He sent my father to head the Egyptian military intelligence in Gaza. And my father started something called the Fedayeen, the Fedayeen operations. The word Fedai means men who self-sacrifice. And they would go into Israel, cross the borders, go into Israel, cause as much damage, destruction, and terror, and come back. And I grew up in the heart of the Arab-Israeli conflict. My father was very worried about his safety. There were several attempts to kill him because of the operations against Israel. One night, the Israeli commandos came into our heavily guarded home, and my father, by coincidence, was not home that night. All they found were women and children. My mother, a maid, and us 5 children. They left us unharmed. Even though the Fedayeen used to kill civilians, families, children, it didn't matter to them. But I didn't even wake up that night. I didn't know anything about what happened, but I remember as a child, I woke up one morning and I saw my mom was very upset. There was a lot of commotion. I saw a truck. They took all the security around our house to check, to take them for interrogation, to know who was the traitor who allowed the commandos to come. And I remember one of the soldiers who never returned. His name was Abdul Halim. And he was my favorite soldier because he used to take us in the truck, the military truck, to the beach. And he used to give us candy. He never returned from the interrogation. And we were told he was killed during interrogation. So this is the kind of interrogation that we are familiar with in the Muslim world. I attended Gaza elementary schools where we learned hatred, vengeance, retaliation. Peace was never an option. I never remember hearing any discussion about peace. The concept of peace was something foreign. Actually, the word peace was never even mentioned in the services of any mosque. The word peace was mentioned one time only in the Quran, and it was, if you're weak, accept peace, and if you're above, don't accept peace. That's the only concept of peace that I understood. And so we recited poetry every day in the school, wishing upon ourselves to die as martyrs. And, I used to see girls reciting this poetry while they're crying, and they would wish upon themselves to die as a martyr. See, our value system was about victimhood, thinking of ourselves as victims, or to be a martyr, to go kill everybody and die as a martyr, either a victim or a martyr. There is nothing in between. But I lived in this atmosphere thinking all of this is normal. When I never used to go, women don't go to mosques, but we used to hear the service of the mosque either on radio or on TV. So, and I remember every Friday prayer, the sheikh would be at the end of the sermon, he would curse, may God destroy the Jews and the infidel and even the Christians and non-Muslims. And he would call non-Muslims the enemies of Allah. And so I grew up with this, and believe it or not, if you grow up with cursing as a form of prayer, it can feel and sound normal. Hatred can be normal because who am I to judge? These are my religious leaders. And I never noticed that this is not holy. So this is how I grew up. 22 Arab countries did everything they could to make life impossible for Israel to exist. The Arab League forbade absorbing the so-called Arab Palestinians, rejected to give them citizenship in any Arab country. So you could see a Palestinian born in Cairo, for instance, and never get the citizenship and die in Cairo. They are born and die in Syria a Palestinian, and they never get citizenship. Why? Because the Arab League wanted the Palestinian problem never to be solved. This is not their agenda. The agenda is to keep them refugees from birth to death. Home. That's what the plan was. My father was eventually killed by Israel to end the Fedayeen operations. After he was killed, my mother and my siblings, we moved back to Cairo. And I remember I was only 8, and I remember people coming to his funeral and telling us, congratulations, your father is in heaven now. He's a shaheed. And I remember I just hated the word shaheed. I hated the word jihad because it took my father away. But I couldn't verbalize it. I couldn't say it. And I didn't want my father to be shaheed. I wanted him down here with us. But the culture was so for sacrificing. They encouraged women to stand up in front of the cameras and say, I gave my son to the jihad and I want my other children to die in the jihad. Women who are for life, for peace, were looked down upon. Women who would be radical, if not more radical than men, who will promote jihad for their children, were lifted up as honorable women to be respected in society. So for a woman to be respected in Islamic society, you have to be as radical, if not more radical than men. And that is why a lot of women are silent. They are proud to give their children to jihad. And many people told that to my mother, to my grandparents, after my father died, that, yo, boy, you're lucky. He's in heaven now. It's the only way to go to heaven is to go and kill the infidel and die in the process. It's a very convoluted way of thinking. But at that time, I never thought of it this way. So the Arabs of Israel were pushed constantly. They are rejected from being absorbed and constantly pushed against the borders with Israel in order to keep the problem alive. The Arab world doesn't have a shortage of land. If you look at the Arab world from the Atlantic Ocean, Morocco, all the way to Persia, from Turkey all the way to Sudan. At that time, when I was a child, the Sinai was practically empty desert. Nobody lived in the Sinai. Like today, there is Sharm el-Sheikh, all the nice beaches. This was a military zone. And there is absolutely no pressing need for Arabs to be so dwelled on wanting to throw the Jews in the sea. This international conflict called the Arab-Israeli conflict really is a fabrication. This is not a conflict over land. And anybody who thinks it's a conflict over land is misguided because we don't see the truth. The truth is Arabs, there is something in Islam, anti-Jewish, anti-Christian, especially anti-Jewish, and I will tell you why. Those people calling themselves Palestinians who live in the Gaza and the West Bank are the pawns of the Arab world. I don't believe that they care about their happiness or welfare. They are set up to live a miserable life on purpose in order to show the world that we're victims. Do you think Saudi Arabia, with all the money they have, the Gulf countries, all these oil money, they can't give them good roads and good homes and good police and turn it into a productive area of the Middle East? They can, but that is not their objective. There is a hidden objective, and I don't understand why Western culture doesn't get it. Why Western media doesn't get it. It's so obvious. So the unemployed people in Gaza and the West Bank, all this high unemployment, where do they go to work? Do they stand on the border of Egypt to get a job? Do they stand on the border of Syria or Jordan? No. They line up on the borders of Israel to the very people they are supposed to kill. It's a very unnatural way of living, and nobody sees it, but they go and blame Israel. They compare the living standard of the West Bank and Gaza with Israel, a democracy, the only democracy in the Middle East. Why don't they compare the living conditions of Gaza and the West Bank with Egypt, with Syria, with Jordan. And if they do, they will find that the standard of living is even higher than many areas of the Arab world. But